I wondered if I could choose an easier life like he had by choosing him. So, I said, exhaling smoke. He was always trying to command me to quit cigarettes, though he would begrudgingly stand beside me on the tiny apartment deck as I smoked. What do you think your future wife will think of your history of sleeping with men? I imagine I won't tell her, he said, both casual and dismissive. I decided it didn't bother me that he'd slept with more men than he could count. So had I. We slept together that night and every night after that. Make sure that it's loud enough. I don't know if I like my setup. Oh, I can pin a comment. How do I do that? Hi! You told me I could pin a comment. Now, I don't know how to do that. All right, well. Yeah, none of these videos are fine. None of these videos are good. It just is what it is. Unmirror my video. Okay, my dear, I say one night at the end of a study session, closing my heavy biology book with a slam. It's Friday night, and I will be going off to salsa dancing at Gloria's, as you know. Seriously, Jeff says, that Mexican dancing thing is more important to you than going out to dinner with me? Am I going to have to give you another lecture on how salsa dancing is not Mexican? It is so annoying how he seems to actually take pride in lumping all Spanish-speaking populations together. Oh, I forgot, he says as he does a mock worshipful bow. You are the expert on being un-American. And though he says it like a joke, it hits me in a way I can't shake off. The word haunts me the rest of the night, un-American. I think of it as I put on a dress my Bosnian, Serbian, American friend brought me from Greece, as I go to a Latin American restaurant with my Jordanian, Colombian girlfriend, as I dance the dance that originated in Cuba, taking turns partnering with men from all over the world. And me, always the white girl, the one people look at and think American. But every single detail they find out later just proves to us both that I'm not. And I think about the life Jeff leads. It's comfortable, but boring. I bet he's never been hungry a day in his life, but the food he eats is bland and flavorless. His country music is simple, but doesn't seem to say anything real, and you certainly can't dance to it. He takes pride in being American, talks often about how the US is the best country on earth, and everything about him makes him seem like its poster boy. He seems to have never questioned his belonging here, his entitlement to success and prosperity, his right to achieve all his dreams. And I want that. I want all of that. I think maybe with him, I can try. Hello, folks. Here I am, recording day 3. Actually, can I pin the sign-up form. Apparently they don't let me pin the sign-up form. Anyway, Twill be here recording the rest of the book today that I hope I will be announcing the release of on Saturday.
Morning, Millicent.
It is awful early for recording. I'm still in a panic that I'm not going to get this done because this is why people clear their week to record an audiobook. They don't go get tattoos this afternoon and do a bunch of podcasts tomorrow. But, you know. Although I think this one is interesting as far as like values go in companies that I'm always looking at. So I had to pay $50 to hold the appointment for the tattoo. But then they're like, they have their whole COVID thing, right? Please, if you feel sick, don't come in. And I'm like, I just want to know if I cancel because I don't feel good, are you still going to charge me the $50? Because if you do, then you don't care about health and COVID. These are the kinds of things I look at when I look at people's businesses. Okay, this chapter is rough. All these chapters are rough. Okay. Do we have anyone on YouTube? I don't know. Figured out I could stream on all three today. Chapter 15, Negligent Discharge, Dallas, 2007. Something I quickly learn about Jeff is that he loves guns. He's obsessed with them. He carries one everywhere and is politically involved with student groups, trying to get open carry laws passed in Texas. He finds every opportunity to talk about guns and shooting and marksmanship. And even though his gun is technically always camouflaged under his clothes, the bulge of it is always visible under his fitted polo shirt and jeans. Before him, I had never really seen a gun up close or known anyone who owned one. I had seen plenty of soldiers and armed men guarding large compounds in Latin America, holding giant rifles. We'd even lived near a Brazilian military outpost in one of our huge communes when I was young, and I remember going to sleep with the sound of large booms over the horizon, and always pictured that it was the Antichrist forces arriving, coming to make us martyrs for our cause. What exactly is Jeff's cause? Sometimes he reminds me of the religious zealots I grew up with, but I can never quite put my finger on his belief system. I am certain guns have something to do with it, and he's an evangelist of sorts, finally convincing me to accompany him to a gun range. He's assured me that he can teach anyone, even me, to be a crack shot. And once I do that, he'll buy me my own gun and a purse with a special holster built in it. I'm still getting used to having a boyfriend with money, and it seems absurd that the first really expensive gift I'll get from a man might be a weapon. The gun is much heavier than I expect, and it takes effort just to hold my arms out straight in front of my body. When I pull the trigger, the recoil is so strong that I smack myself in the forehead with my own hands and the butt of the handgun. Jeff thinks it's hilarious. That's really gonna bruise, he says, and oh my God, you're such a girl. You have to hold it with more strength than that. He looks at my biceps with disapproval. We'll have to work on your push-ups too. I can't believe this is the first time you've held a gun, he says. So un-American. Calling me un-American has become one of his favorite things to say, like he knows how much power it has over me, how much I desperately want the opposite to be true. And he's taken it upon himself to teach me. Sometimes I imagine myself as a blank slate, this naive little cult baby with no ties to anyone or anything, and Jeff has offered to mold me in his image. He constantly reassures me that he'll teach me how to be a real American, and I find this comforting. He's everything I think I am supposed to want. He comes up behind me, pressing his body tightly against mine, sliding his hands down both of my arms before grabbing my hands tightly and pressing them into the gun I'm holding. This is how tightly you have to hold it. You have to be stronger than the blast of the bullet leaving the gun. You have to control it. It almost hurts. I almost tell him to stop. I don't. The second time I pull the trigger, I know what to expect. And I've learned from my life that as long as you know what something is going to feel like, you can survive it. And in that moment, I feel strong, fierce, and bold, like nobody could hurt me unless I let them. I think about how much I would love to see some of the uncles now, and I pull the trigger over and over and over until the gun is empty. Turns out that I'm not a horrible shot. That night, Jeff has some friends over, and we all sit around a folding table that serves as the dining room table, playing cards and drinking. I invite my friends from the chess team to these gatherings sometimes, but even though they love playing poker, they almost never come. Jeff doesn't fit in with that group at all, and doesn't really make an effort to try. When we leave, there's always some remark about how there are too many foreigners for him to keep everyone straight. The way he says foreigners always makes me uncomfortable, as though he's suggesting there's something wrong with my friends just because they weren't born here. Neither was I, but I'm an exception somehow, because of my citizenship, because of how I look and talk, because I can pass, even if it's only surface deep. I have a hard time fitting in with Jeff's friends, who all seem so normal and boring. They're convinced that America is the best country in the world, even though none of them have ever been abroad. Everyone is from Texas and white, and that kind of guy who thinks the fact that I speak Spanish is exotic, which is the extent of what Jeff lets me tell them about myself. When people ask where I'm from, he often pipes in to answer Houston for me. They're all in the same fraternity, which is how you know it's not actually the Jewish fraternity, as some people like to claim. Jeff is fond of repeating when they are all together. Everyone goes home around midnight. My head is spinning from the gin as I walk to the bedroom alone. My whole body is warm, and I feel a bit like I could float away. I stop spinning when I see the handgun on the bedside table. Jeff talks about gun safety a lot, and how only idiots and criminals do stupid things with guns. But he always leaves his gun on the nightstand when he's at home, just in case he needs it in a hurry, he says. What he thinks he needs a gun for in a campus apartment, I have no idea. I've gotten used to him thinking everything's a matter of life or death, that he's always under threat somehow, as if he even knows what that feels like. I walk over and pick up the gun, turning it around in my hands, running my fingers over both sides of it. It's a special gun that his fraternity brothers brought him for his 21st birthday, some kind of limited edition. Got that wrong. Maybe coffee is not what I need to drink.
Did you get my message about giving me all those files on a thumb drive?
Mm-mm. But they're all on my keyboard. Oh no, I should get them from the camera. Do you have the thumb drive?
Huh?
Do you have the thumb drive?
Yeah, I could have one.
Something is a little crinkly. Uh-oh. Still here. We'll be here all day. Where to get photos from? These files are not my favorites. Okay. Tis downloading. Provide permissions for everything.
Hello, cat.
Yeah, I think that's how we do it. What are tambour hooks? Where did I stop? I know what it is. It's that oven going in the background. Need to make sure that's not going to screw up everything.
Chapter table. Jeff talks about gun safety a lot.
It's fine. Sharper point and crochet hooks. Huh. I have just the metal ones. Is that what they are? With a sharp point like a needle? I use that sometimes. But a lot of the scarves just a regular crochet hook and just go through like butter. Like this one that I'm making now. Check it out. It's Istanbul, one of my favorite places on earth. I'm putting yellow puffy sleeves on it. I'm not even working on the one I'm desperate to get done before Saturday for my friend's birthdays because the metal needles is a really terrible sound. As I'm sure many of you that watch my normal videos know. And I still think that people that give negative comments to creators are jackasses. I have a hard time fitting in with Jeff's friends, who all seem so normal and boring. They're all convinced that America is the best country in the world, even though none of them has ever been abroad. Everyone is from Texas and white, and that kind of guy who thinks the fact that I speak Spanish is exotic, which is the extent of what Jeff lets me tell them about myself. When people ask where I'm from, he often pipes in to answer, Houston, for me. They're all in the same fraternity. Already recorded that part. Take me to the photo. delete that. Figure out where we stopped. Okay. Good morning, fellow systemites. I couldn't delete it. Delete. I walk over and pick up the gun, turning it around in my hands, running my fingers over both sides of it. It's a special gun that his fraternity brothers brought him for his 21st birthday, some kind of limited edition. Without thinking about it too much, I clear the gun, racking the slide with a hard pull, enjoying the feel of it, the clicks and sharp sounds it makes. It's so sure of itself and its purpose in the world. So unlike me. My head is strangely clear as I think to myself how much I'd like to pull the trigger, to feel that hard, decisive click. I ejected the magazine, so I'm pretty sure there's no bullet in there. As I hold the gun to my temple and imagine the moment the bullet explodes from the chamber, I realize I'm not entirely certain. For a second after I pull the trigger, the world stands still, and I'm not sure if I'm still alive, or if I shot myself after all. I'm suspended in a soundless universe, completely weightless. At the last moment before the trigger clicked, I changed my target, straightening my arm and pointing the gun directly at the apartment wall across from me. As the bedroom door crashes open and Jeff comes rushing in, I realize the gun was, in fact, loaded. The force of it slammed me backward into the wall as a bullet disappeared into the wall in front of me. In a rush, I feel a splitting pain in my head, my eardrums reverberating so intensely that I can hear the ringing deep in my brain. I am limp as Jeff shoots into action, picking me up off the floor, eyes wild with terror as he passes his hands all over me, checking for blood. I don't know what happened, I keep saying over and over again, as he puts me in the bed and covers me with the blanket. He scoops up the gun, bullet casing, and discarded magazine, stuffing them all into the gun safe in his closet and locking it, then turns out the bedroom light. He peeks out the bedroom window and over to the next building. Looks like it went clean fucking through. Paralyzed and shivering violently at the same time, I cling to the heavy comforter, unable to shake the feeling of how close I came to ending it. I can't tell if I'm relieved or disappointed that I changed the target of the gun at the last minute. I'm only 19 and already so exhausted by trying to fit into this crazy wonderland that everyone around me pretends is normal. There's something poetic about nobody knowing why I killed myself, about being as misunderstood in death as I am in life. Maybe it's a way to make all this pain beautiful. Now we wait, Jeff says, climbing into bed next to me. And no matter what happens next, you don't say anything. Understand? What are we waiting for? I managed to say, my voice shaking with fear and adrenaline and alcohol. To see if you've just killed someone, Daniela. He never asks me why I shot the gun. And I joined the army. They gave me a gun and a top secret clearance anyway. This book really kind of jumps around because you're pretty much expected to be familiar with Uncultured, or we were gonna like add more to make it more of a standalone book, but kind of it jumps. So Babe, are you gonna be a while doing this?
Hmm?
Are you gonna be a while doing this?
I'm just waiting for you to give me that hard drive back.
Okay. Just maybe it's done. Ooh, is it done? I think it is done. Okay. There you go. 2 through 15.
Hmm?
This is chapter 2 through 15.
Okay. Well, you didn't give me one through the prologue and one because you're good with those.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can still give them to you if you're gonna, because you're gonna
What
use it.
file form? They're just from your camera files, right?
Yeah. What am I making? I'm recording a video memoir. I don't know. I don't know what to call it. I'm trying to think of a word. Because if I say video memoir, it sounds like it's going to actually be a movie, but it's just me reading a memoir on video, and that's how I'm releasing it. And I'm making also a scarf again, which is my thing that I invented, which is a scarf that I turn into a cardigan. And I've got this Istanbul scarf, and I'm adding puffy short yellow sleeves into it, kind of like this one. Yesterday I hurt my ankle by sitting cross-legged for so long. Let's see if we can get it on my Yeah, I feel like I don't wear anything but t-shirts and scarfigans now because they're so cool. I'm just gonna try to make like 50 this summer, and then I'm gonna try to have a fashion show. Chapter 16, The Time of My Life. Dallas, 2008. I've never had a puppy before, and Zeus is the love of my life, though very, very challenging. It didn't cross my mind to ask Jeff before I brought the puppy home. We don't officially live together after all, though we've spent literally every night together in the 6 months since we started dating, and I barely see my friends at all anymore. I just meant to go to the shelter to look, but when I saw that tiny black ball of fluff, it was suddenly impossible to leave without him. And even though I knew nothing about dogs and can't get him to calm down, the unconditional love Zeus gives me makes it all worth it. It feels nice to not be alone. Jeff is livid that I made such a big decision without talking to him. At first, he lets me bring the puppy over, but he refuses to help me at all. And after a few weeks, he decides he's had enough. I usually go along with whatever he says, but I try to take a stand about Zeus. You don't just throw dogs away because they're challenging, I try to tell him over and over. I promise I'll learn how to train him. I promise we'll get better. The more I plead, the angrier Jeff gets. He tells me I can't bring him over anymore, knowing full well what that would mean. It's a threat, an ultimatum. It's Zeus or Jeff. Maybe I made a mistake, I admit. Maybe it's too much. Jeff smiles and springs into action, posting an ad on Craigslist immediately. I feel a little jolt of something that burns through the grief. Jeff does love me. My decision pleased him. And look, he's taking care of things. After a few hours and many inquiries, nobody is interested in taking Zeus yet. I know it'll get someone to come for him, Jeff says with a weird half smile as he scoops the puppy out of my arms. Before I can relax, Before I can react, he pulls his ever-present gun out of its holster, points it toward the little guy, and snaps a photo with his webcam. He tosses Zeus back on the bed and posts a new Craigslist ad with the headline, "Someone come get this puppy before he gets it." An hour later, Zeus is gone. Tears run down my cheeks as I try to calm myself, telling myself Zeus will have a much better life with whoever had come to get him, who I could hear out there yelling at Jeff and threatening to call the cops. I don't say anything when Jeff comes in. I don't even want him to see that I'm crying, and I'm realized I'm scared about what he might do next. He has a serene smile on his face when he comes back into the bedroom. He engulfs my face with his big hands and says, "Your eyes are beautiful when you cry." Then he jumps up and starts pulling his nicest clothes out of the closet. "Come on," he says, kissing me briefly. "I'm taking you to dinner somewhere fancy, somewhere I know you've never been before." And like he's reading my mind, he adds, "Don't worry, we'll stop by Nordstrom's first and pick up a dress that's good enough." A few months later, I try to break up with him after a spring break study abroad trip, a week of freedom, and in response, Jeff asks me to marry him. He tells me he's decided to commission into the Army, where he can use his degree as a finance officer, the first stepping stone in his desire to be a Texas politician someday. And somehow, in the 5-hour conversation that night, I get caught up in his depiction of the life we could have. The family, the friends, the money, the position. If I say yes, I'll never have to be poor and powerless again. Once I agree, things happen very quickly. I begin trying to plan a nice, simple wedding in Dallas with my friends, professors, and some of Mom's family I reconnected with. But Jeff decrees that we will have a destination wedding in Puerto Vallarta. He convinces me he's doing me a favor having it in Mexico, even though I already bought a princess dress with 15 layers of tulle, terrible for a beach wedding. He refuses to listen when I try to tell him I don't want to go back to the place where I had spent miserable years of my life, a prisoner and a slave, and try to pretend it's idyllic. He's the one who controls our money. We put everything on my credit cards, and he promises once he starts getting paychecks from the Army, we'll pay it off in a jiffy. Oh, my voice is too dry. I just go back to the top. We get married by a justice of the peace 2 months before our actual ceremony in Mexico. And then I am on a beach, boiling under the endless tulle of the dress I'd refused to exchange for a simple beach gown, and fuming with rage as my husband awkwardly imitates Patrick Swayze's Dirty Dancing steps to "I've had the time of my life" for our first dance. All I can think about is how 2 hours before the ceremony, my brother Darius came running up to me, panting and red-faced. "You can't marry him, Danny," he kept saying over and over. "You just can't marry him." My family crowded around, Mom and Dad and Mary and the cult boy who'd just gotten her pregnant at 19, and my other brothers. "What's wrong, Darius? What did you see?" Dad asked, and my brother went bright red. "Nothing, just gross," he stammered. "They were napping together on one bed. Her husband guy and his friend, the best man." Darius's air quotes around friend filled in the blanks. As I watch my husband dance, I am pretty sure I know exactly what my brother had seen. But I hadn't named it. As I watch my husband dance, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what my brother had seen. But he hadn't named it out loud, and neither will I. I can ignore all of it. I can put it away where no one, not even I, can find it. I am a good actor, and so is Jeff, and we are picture perfect. That night, Jeff refuses to have sex with me, no matter how much I cry and beg. We have the next few days to ourselves, he tells me, then adds with a snap, we'll have plenty of sex after everyone goes home. I cry the whole night, and I know for sure now that what he wants is definitely not me. It just feels like he wants to own me. The next night, we go for a swim after dark. A giant wave throws us both, and Jeff's knee lands in my face, sending my teeth straight through my bottom lip. The hotel calls a doctor, who tells me I will need stitches. When he realizes I speak Spanish and Jeff doesn't, he shuts him out of the room and asks me if I need help. Tells me he can help me get away. I laugh it off, but I start to wonder if maybe Jeff and I are not as good actors as I think we are. The honeymoon is over for me. I have stitches in my face, am on heavy drugs, and am not allowed to go in the sun. I spend the next 3 days in the hotel room while Jeff's best man, his friend, extends his trip to keep my husband company. I barely see Jeff during that time. No reason for him not to enjoy the vacation, after all. This is probably the least polished chapter of the whole thing. But for those of you watching, the reason I originally didn't put him in uncultured and I was like, I just can't understand what is happening. Like, it was very clear he didn't want to be married to me. He just wanted to own me. And then as soon as I got the little white supremacy piece, I was like, oh, yep, it all makes sense now. Okay. But yes, this is the least polished chapter coming up because I had to add it in last minute to like connect the things, because otherwise we were just jumping 2 years into the future when I was an officer in the Army. Chapter 17, No Women in the Boys Club. Babe, you want to watch out, you know. You're getting a little fat, Jeff said, looking down from his seated position as I lay naked on the bed beside him. And I felt like I was spiraling. I just need to delete that one so it doesn't confuse us later. Delete. Camera. Okay. But it was still recording. Nope, just recorded all that in between stuff for fun. Can't delete it because I'm playing it. To make sure this happens, otherwise we're gonna end up with that blabbing in my video memoir. Okay. Chapter 17, No Women in the Boys Club. Babe, you want to watch out, you know. Getting a little fat, Jeff said, looking down from his seated position as I lay naked on the bed beside him. And I felt like I was spiraling down some kind of never-ending rabbit hole. I saw him go out of focus as I fell backward in time, hearing Uncle Zephaniah's voice telling my 16-year-old sister, Jamie, that at 63 kilos, she was getting a bit too heavy. I did that math in pounds once, not even 140 pounds on a 5'5" frame, and I hated him for it. You better watch out was my whole goddamn childhood, usually followed by intense physical punishment for not watching closely enough. Everything in cults is about control. It's watch what you eat, watch what you say, watch what you wear, how you talk to adults, and for sure, never ever forget to watch what you think. I thought of my stepfather, one of the most accomplished artists in the cult, whose pictures we all grew up staring at because we didn't have access to anything else to read. Why is the computer dying? Oh, because it's not plugged in. Oh. I have a history of this, people. The history of calling the IT guys over to the intelligence office to plug my computer in for me. And they would be like, ma'am, is it plugged in? Yes, it's plugged in. I'd be like, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. And then they would come plug it in for me. And it was always never plugged in. At least when I wrote this book, I knew that I had an eating disorder, unlike when I wrote Uncultured and my readers had to tell me through trigger warnings. That was fun. And I thought of how he drew caricatures of all of us into his cartoons. Me with my big frizzy blonde halo of unruly curls and huge glasses covering nearly my whole face. My little sister with her almond-shaped eyes and the largest smile you've ever seen. My little brothers who were practically interchangeable blonde cherubs. And my mom, my generally plus-sized mom, always pregnant, nursing, or caring for the newest baby. Not in Dad's cartoons. There, she was perfect, with the huge rack and a teeny tiny waist. And I remembered a journal entry from when I was 15, as though I was watching myself write it from above. Well, I'd scratched into the single piece of notebook paper I'd torn out of my school workbook to write on. If I have to be the ugliest girl here, at least I'll be the skinniest. Landing back in my body with a jolt, I knew one thing. This marriage wasn't going to survive this. Jeff and I hadn't seen each other in nearly 6 months. He'd shipped out to Army basic training a week after we'd gotten back from Mexico. I'd gotten on a plane to Germany for a semester abroad, prepared to meet a bunch of new people without having the ability to smile because of these stitches still in my lip from the accident. At least I was going to Germany, and Germans didn't smile, right? While Jeff disappeared into the all-male world of combat arms basic training, I landed in my first new country in a long time. Nothing to fear, I thought. I was born traversing the globe. But it was an entirely new feeling to land in a country where almost everyone looked like me on the surface, but where I couldn't understand a single word they were saying. I was so used to being the white girl that stood out in the countries of the global south where I was raised, but secretly being able to understand the language and culture much better than anyone ever expected. One thing was interesting though. I definitely felt like the token American in Germany. It was 2008 and I was asked to appear on one radio show after the other, from the university's student show to the local news, to represent the American point of view as the Barack Obama election was taking place. If only they knew how American I wasn't, I would think Riley every time. By the time I'd gotten on the plane to come home, I was fairly certain I was going to join the Army myself. It was so much easier to make friends at a German university, where I was expected to be strange and confusing. I was the American girl, and none of my German friends, where military or civil service was compulsory, could understand why I would volunteer to be a soldier when I didn't have to. Jeff had spent a lot of time selling me on the idea of how glamorous it would be to be an Army officer. He would show me photos of beautiful blonde ladies in drab green belted uniforms, and I agreed. They did look chic and badass. Maybe I could be that woman, I thought. What else was I going to do? I literally still didn't understand how the world worked. And what if it wasn't like college? What if I couldn't just work harder than everyone else all the time and come out on top? What if I didn't belong, just the way the aunties had always said? At least in the Army, I'd belong, I told myself. Put me in a uniform and I can blend in. It's my basic life skill, after all. If nothing else, I'd build a resume, get in shape, and have a bunch of great stories to tell my civilian friends. I'd had a great time in Germany and still faithfully sent Jeff a letter every single day as he made his way through basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and then officer school at Fort Benning, Georgia. I'd eaten up his sparse letters in return because I wanted to know everything I could to prepare for what this would be like when my time came. I'd missed him terribly, agonizing over my forlorn feelings of disparate love in ways that I never seemed to when we were together. And so it made less than no sense why this would be one of the first things my loving husband said to me after such a long time apart. When he walked into the apartment, dropped his duffel bag at the front door, and had picked me up in his now perfectly chiseled arms and thrown me against the wall, I thought I couldn't be happier, because at least this time I could tell he wanted me. I had somewhere to belong. I just really don't want to read this part with my husband standing right in the kitchen.
Okay, while you're pausing, what's the tongue sticking out marker on your videos again?
Next chapter.
Huh?
The next chapter.
That's the next chapter.
That's like the end of a chapter.
That's the last video of a
That's
chapter?
like just a picture. Every time I finish a chapter, I just take a picture of myself doing this.
Oh, that's
and that's the end of the chapter. Yeah.
So that's just another in photo, and then there's video files on either side of that are all chapters.
Yes.
Okay, I can handle that. Sorry. Still working on this infusing here, so I just need a little bit to move some oil around.
And I lost my space. I'm finding so many typos while I read this. But of course I can't stop and fix them. I don't believe I'm able to do it. The reading. Oh yeah, you don't have to read Uncultured before this, I don't think, but it just seems very choppy if you don't. There's all this background. And I did have to pull in the scene where he tells me that he used to be gay. I pulled that in from Uncultured to give the context here. Fun story about checking yourself into a hotel. When I gave Uncultured to Mr. Young. So the first, I'm just gonna go get it because it's so fun what it is.
It was a hotel, it was a bed and breakfast.
And my house now smells like somebody's making edibles. So this is like the first copy that I get of Uncultured, right? It's just blank and white. Nobody wants to read this thing when you hand it to them. Anyways, this is the one you have to send out to all these people to ask them for blurbs. This one doesn't have any names changed. So my husband, who is not a big reader, my current husband, not this guy. People always think it's funny when I say current. I'm like, well, yeah, because I have an ex-husband that gets talked about a lot in my work, and also that guy's better be on his guard. So the first part of the story is when I sold Uncultured, I bought him an airplane, and I sold my book about a cult, and I bought him an airplane called Mooney. Get it? So anyways, the book, when this was done, I gave him this book and sent him on a trip. He like flew to a bed and breakfast in Virginia. And he just took 2 days to read it straight through. And then apparently there was like a lawyer conference going on. And so the man who just flew himself in on his private airplane to read his wife's forthcoming book was like the coolest person there. Also, the retired special operations helicopter pilot is always the coolest person randomly at your happy hour. So, you know.
Now I'm reduced to.
Oh, the reading with him in the house. Well, it was funny because I was asking him, I was like, do you want to read UnAmerican? Like, do you think you need to? And he's like, no, like, it's fine. And then we've just realized, of course, that he is just hearing me read the whole thing. So about publishing your story without wanting your friends or family to read it. One, I say you need to like just get past that. But two, don't borrow trouble because most of your friends and your family won't read it. So I think like that's the part that keeps everybody from doing it. I agree. I'm also scared for everyone with a husband. But, so everyone when they first start, they're like, okay, I want to publish this under a pseudonym. I can tell you right now, unless you self-publish, not going to happen. Like, authors are required to sell their own books and to be part of it more today than ever before, which is probably why it's ridiculous that they still get 85% of the profits, but, so you then either have a choice to write a novel or like write a novel based on your life. I'm doing one based on my family's story, kind of, but then you can change whatever details you want, or you just get comfortable writing it. I know a lot of people that are writers just ask their parents specifically not to read it. I really wanted my mom to read Uncultured, but I definitely asked her to like skip chapter 5. I don't think she did. But yeah, for the most part, the biggest thing is just don't expect anyone to support you because people will surprise you. Some of the people that I thought were the closest people in my life don't talk to me anymore because I wrote this book. Another interesting thing, like in Uncultured, there's my mom, who's a character in the cult, who's like the good person who's always looking out for me. And then the army side, there's this Colonel Scott Halter, who is like the good guy, still my mentor today. And both of them stayed with me through the publishing of the book, but I didn't know that. So I still had to be willing. And I still wondered when I handed it off to my mom, like, am I ending my relationship with my mom right now? And with Scott Halter, I didn't even wonder. I just knew that it was going to be over. I cried so many tears about it. And then I gave it to him, and then he stuck with me, and he let me publish his legal name in the book while he was still active duty, which gave me so much credibility with my publisher. Don't have to get permission to use people's names. All you have to do is make sure you're not slandering or libelous so that they can't come sue you. So that means that the publisher owns the book, right? So if you want to sue over Uncultured, you sue Macmillan Books. And so they make sure, and I got very lucky because my editor was just like, write the book. Write what you want to say, and we'll get the legal read. Most people just decide that they will never be able to tell this story, and so they just don't do it. Another reason why I think they passed on this book was nobody was sure if we could get the legal clearance for this book. Um, I am just betting that I can do it on my own, and even if he does come sue me, the openly racist white supremacist is not going to get a sympathetic jury. So, like, I can take this risk. Same as, like, I talk about Jeremy Spencer of Fleetwood Mac is Uncle Jerry. I can take that risk. Publisher didn't let me do it. Now, it also had to get cleared by the Pentagon because, yeah, the best percentage is in self-publishing, but unless you have 40,000 people in your close personal network, you're not going to get as good of a deal as by traditional publishing. Like, it's not even close. Once in a while, a book that's self-published can go viral, but I might self-publish Culting of America because I don't know if anyone will buy it and because I already have a huge audience now. But I still will not expect to sell 50,000 copies in a year and a half. It's just the traditional market. There's a reason all the best-selling books come from there. But I did have to get the Pentagon to clear it, and if you've ever worked for the DoD and your writing is in regard to the military in any way, even fiction, you have to get your book cleared by the Pentagon, only for secrets. And they do ask you to please make sure that you've either checked with everyone that you could use their name if they're still on active duty, or you change their name. Again, you don't have to, but you do. I do make money. I mean, I happen to be like the only person doing like public cult stuff that I know of that's actually managing to make money in it. But that's because of a lot of different things, namely that a lot of my bills are paid by disability and military retirement. So I can take 5 years to make projects like this. And I make about 15% on books that are sold through traditional. One of the reasons you see me selling the autograph copies so hard is because I make a lot more money for those, because I'm also a reseller of the book. So when I buy my books for whatever reseller price and then I sell them autograph for $30, that's like income to me right now. All the other books that sell in the other ways are still paying off my advance. So in the future, those will be income, but I will get, my max, I think, ever is I will get $4, but that's on the publishing price, which is $28.99, which only lasts for about the first 6 months. So I think hard copy and paperback are $17.99 on Amazon. So I only will get like $1 or $2 even when that sells out. But I will get that for the rest of my life, and 75 years after my death, my heirs will get it. So creating things with copyrights is good. And I'm pretty good at selling my own book. So I'm not living off of the income of just writing. No, that's very hard to do. I got a giant advance, which gave me about 5 years of space to run. But then you do stuff like this, right? Like I worked on Uncultured for years, and then I sold it for a lot of money. I worked on UnAmerican for 6 months straight with a co-writer who did it for free, and then we just got nothing. And nobody worries, she will be getting 25% of the money of this video noir. But yeah, and so it's very like, my books are fine, but nobody likes publishing my essays. They all consider them to be too extreme. I wrote a 4,000 word essay called Incidental about the history of the military using rape as a weapon of war, from Native American women and children to Vietnamese women to women who are in the US military, the highest percentage of which is Native American women. And I wrote this with a Native American scholar, and nobody would publish it. We tried popular publishing and academic publishing. I wrote an essay right after January 6th and really worked on it after I found out about my ex-husband. It's called Major Extremism, talking about exactly why 20% of the domestic terrorists were veterans, and nobody wanted to publish that because it was too extreme. I wrote an essay after the cartel in Mexico murdered the La Mora members of the Lamora family, who is a Mormon polygamous cult that traffics their children back and forth across the U.S. and Mexico. And I wrote an essay being like, why is nobody talking about why these children were in Mexico in the first place? Nobody wanted to publish that. But one of the things I'm going to do, so I just started a Patreon. You can find that link in my link tree. And that's one of the things I'm going to do, is that, I've spent the last 5 years setting myself up to make money from my brain. And it took me about 4 years to get that going. But what I did do is make 5 years of tons of content. So even like right now that I'm building my YouTube channel, I'm just mostly taking everything and putting it from my TikTok onto my YouTube. So not going to do an anthology, but I am going to, like, what I'm doing here, I'm going to do with basically everything I've written, and do like read the essay out and then put it there for $2.99 or whatever. Obviously free to subscribing Patreon people. So that's what I'm trying to do. It's just hard. Look, I just got my first Patreon member, Summer G. So I'm just starting to build that up. And I was trying to figure out how to stream on Patreon today, but I couldn't. Actually, I think I remember I have to stream on YouTube and then connect it to Patreon. So I'll do that in the beginning. Does it tell you how many videos you've made? TikTok? I don't know, but I have posted on average 20 videos a day, 5 days a week for over a year. So I know it's a lot. Okay, sorry. Let me go back to recording now. Yeah, let me take the jacket off. I don't remember where I ended it. Because at least this time, I could tell he wanted me. I had somewhere to belong. As he pushed my dress up to my hips, exposing things I'd purposefully not covered in anticipation, and plunged himself deep into me, I inhaled sharply. It's not pain, it's passion, I told myself, as my body tried to twist and stretch to accommodate him, my loving husband, who seemed to have no recollection of just how long it had been, or of what that might mean for me. So I gritted my teeth and focused on his bicep muscles. I told myself this was so fucking hot. And even if I couldn't come, I didn't want to ever come down. You know, Jeff continued, his words bringing me back into my body with a crash. I'd said nothing after his first flippant words, trying hard to just remember to take the next breath. You're not fat, but you sure are getting a little flabby. His eyes trailed over my small breasts and down to my stomach, which I tried to suck in without it being noticeable. Don't worry, though, it's just all that drinking beer with Germans. The American army will whip you into shape in no time. I wondered if it would, though, if there was anything if anything, just wrote that. Wait. Uh-oh. Did I just delete the whole thing? Yes, I did. Sorry, I'm gonna read the uncomfortable part again. I thought I couldn't be happier, because at least this time I could tell he wanted me. I had somewhere to belong. As he pushed my dress up to my hips, exposing things I purposefully not covered in anticipation, and plunged himself deep into me, I inhaled sharply. It's not pain, it's passion, I told myself, as my body tried to twist and stretch to accommodate him, my loving husband, who seemed to have no recollection of just how long it had been, or of what that might mean for me. So I gritted my teeth and focused on his bicep muscles. I told myself this was so fucking hot. And even if I couldn't come, I didn't want to ever come down. You know, Jeff continued, his words bringing me back into my body with a crash. I'd said nothing after his first flippant words, trying hard to just remember to take the next breath. You're not fat, but you sure are getting a little flabby. His eyes trailed over my small breasts and down to my stomach, which I tried to suck in without it being noticeable. Don't worry though, it's just all that drinking beer with Germans. The American army will whip you into shape in no time. I wondered if it would though, if there was anything that would make me shrink down small enough to fit into the palm of Jeff's hand, the way he seemed to always be demanding. What do you mean women can't be in the infantry? In the United States of America? In 2009? I couldn't believe it, no matter how many times Danielle repeated it. It couldn't possibly be true that there was a legal way to bar someone from a job because of something they were born with, something they never got to choose. Could it? Didn't we have laws about that? No discrimination based on race, gender, and a few other things? How could they even get away with this? Did other people know about this? I wondered. I was glad I didn't say that out loud because Danielle was staring at me with an odd expression, her head cocked to the side like I was a child that was slow to understand something. Yeah, she emphasized slowly, her Jersey accent more pronounced than ever. The combat ban, ever heard of it? I sat down hard because I hadn't. After a brief standoff in the first 2 weeks of U.S. Army basic training, Danielle and I had become fast friends. Danielle and I were both specialists, a rank just above private, because we had college degrees and we were on our way to officer candidate school as soon as we got through basic training. We were slotted to be in the same class there too, so it made sense for us to hang together. Every day she would sit in her bunk writing letters during personal time, while I would invariably be doing push-ups over wedding photos or close-ups of Jeff to encourage myself to get my nose as close as possible to the ground, or cranking out endless sit-ups with my feet hooked under our metal bunk bed frame, or just generally exercising whatever muscle I could still move by the end of a long day of training and getting smoked by the drill sergeants for the most minor of offenses. Danielle and I got smoked extra for daring to be officer candidates. It was one of the things the recruiters did warn you about, that the drill sergeants would hate you because the day you graduated basic training, you would be of equal rank, and soon on our ways to outranking them. I didn't mind. If nothing else, I was going to come out of basic training with a perfectly chiseled body, ready to take on everything I knew they were going to throw at us in the officer course. I was better at this than all of these suckers. I'd grown up under dictatorial degrees, absolute food control.
Stop.
I was better at this than all of these suckers. I'd grown up under dictatorial decrees, absolute food control, endless labor, and total isolation. Army basic training was a cakewalk after growing up in the apocalyptic army of God. I would be like one of those perfect blonde women that Jeff obviously admired. I didn't care if it killed me. Just tell me I couldn't. Nothing could possibly motivate me more. Seriously? Danielle looked at me with an expression that can only be described as flabbergasted. Danielle had joined the Army because she wanted to be a United Nations peacekeeper, and women absolutely had to have military experience to be competitive, or to even be considered at all. So she joined up, just like that. When she told me that, I thought she was the most put together, planned out adult I'd ever met. And at 25, she really was an adult compared to most of the 17 and 18-year-olds in training with us that I, at 22, could only describe as babies. I, in comparison, had joined because of my ability to argue myself into absolutely any position that I wanted to passionately take on. Danielle explained it to me as though I was 2 years old. Look, women have always been in the fight. There's literally been a woman in active combat ever since the Revolutionary War, even if they had to disguise themselves as men to do it. They've never let us do it, not officially. Then, when that MF George Bush wanted to put women in helicopters for Desert Storm, he made a ban against women in ground combat even stronger, just to appease those motherfuckers in motherfucking Congress. Don't know if they'll ever overturn that one. Best make your peace with becoming an intelligence officer, my friend. I loved listening to Danielle's absolute irreverence for absolutely everything about America. As a girl from New Jersey who'd been traveling abroad as much as she could from the age of 16, the age where I moved to my country for the first time. It was no matter, I told myself. I didn't actually want to be in the infantry. Who did if they didn't have to? I wanted to be an intelligence officer, but I sure as hell wanted to be able to be an infantry officer. I mean, what could men do that I couldn't? It's not like a penis grants magic abilities, after all. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that you had to be in the center of it all, the main operations, the violent stuff, if you wanted to climb the highest. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that a cult baby like me, a kid who grew up with only conditional love and trained to perform since birth, wanted more than to be the one at the top, no matter who she has to trample or suck absolutely dry in order to get there. Yes. You can get an autograph book from me right now. It's in the link tree. You click on my link tree and then you click the tab over to shop. And you can get autograph book, any of these t-shirts, even commission knitted stuff, etc. I keep worrying that one day I'm gonna like go viral and I'm gonna log in and someone's gonna have ordered like 200 RBG sweaters that I'm never gonna be able to keep up. There's a bit of a line for that one. I'm like always working on the RBG sweater. And every time I finish one and I make a video about it, someone orders a new one. So it's a little nice. I like to joke that I make as much money for knitting with my Harvard Masters as I make consulting with my Harvard Masters, which is a lot of fun. MFers and MF in Congress. Yep, I should do that one. Take a picture of that. And thank you so much for buying the autographed copy of my book. I'm glad you think it's good. And I appreciate you supporting me so that I can keep doing this. And yes, I'm suspended from my shop. So it's there. You can just Google uncultured autographed on TikTok Marketplace and find it. I just can't pin it to this live anymore or to my videos. For 90 days. I'm on partial excommunication from TikTok. Okay, let's see. Do we feel like this sleeve is long enough? Should I start tapering it? I think so. Oh yes, the exact shirt I have on is up there. And you can order Uncultured on Audible. You can't pre-order this one because this one is just me. Something that everyone told me was not publishable, and I said, hold my beer. Okay. Thanks, I love it too. It's very, very, very scratchy and uncomfortable, but I will likely be wearing it under a shirt because most yarn is not good enough for me. And thank you for pre-ordering it. You probably pre-ordered it before I'd even recorded it. Because, and again, like, so first of all, this is only 45,000 words, and I'm trying to do it in 5 days, much less perfectly than was done on the audiobook for Uncultured, and it still feels like it's killing me. Uncultured is 120,000 words. and they gave me 5 days to record it. Yeah. And I did it. I tapped into my I can do it with a broken heart energy, and I fucking did it. But it was hard. Okay. Border Patrol. If you heard the catfishing chapter yesterday, this one is going to be tied into that. Daniela realizing that she has been programmed both ways about the police. One, that they're dangerous and scary and out to get you. And two, that you're a white lady, so they will treat you nicely. Yeah, 5 days is insane. And there was like, this was one of those things when people are like, take care of yourself. And I'm like, look, everybody, my publishing process was a freaking joy. Everybody was wonderful. Everybody treated me so well. They didn't make me audition for the audiobook. They gave me a wonderful director. Everything was fine. By Wednesday of the week, I was breaking. And I was like emailing my agent at night, like, what can I do? They gave me 5 days. Then the director went to Paris for 2 weeks. And then Uncultured launched. So it was just like, I understand, like, take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of yourself, but there's just literally no option for me right now. I just have to push through and do it. And I was very glad that my therapist had told me to make sure I blanked out like 2 weeks to recover afterwards, because I needed it. In the pinned video of recording the audiobook, yeah, they definitely did not let me knit. Even like gesticulating too much with your hands can like make sound. So I'm just trying to like sit there and read. Very fun. And poor Brian, the sound engineer, like nobody gave him a heads up about what this book was about. Like, so just poor dude. Got to walk in on the last day and be like, okay, Brian, all the raping's over. Yeah. All right, back to the chapter. Chapter 18, Border Patrol, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 2009. I'm in the car with my friend Nina, complaining about Jeff, a usual topic of conversation between us. Nina and I have been at spy school, the U.S. Army Center for Military Intelligence Training, for a month now, and we are already both first of all, it's the military intelligence center of excellence. Delete this video. Delete. Chapter 18, Border Patrol, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 2009. I'm in the car with my friend Nina, complaining about Jeff, a usual topic of conversation between us. Didn't do my picture. Hang on. Chapter 18, Border Patrol, Fort Huachuca, Arizona, 2009. I'm in the car with my friend Nina, complaining about Jeff, a usual topic of conversation between us. Nina and I have been at spy school, the U.S. Army Center for Military Intelligence, for a month now, and we are both already almost a full year into our military training. She's from a small town called Forks, Washington, a state in some far corner of the country I've never been to, which is apparently famous for being the fictional setting for a book series about vampires. She's the third generation of a military family originally from Guam, a small island in the Pacific Ocean near the Philippines. The military is pretty much the only way people from Guam usually, rise up, she has told me, because we're U.S. citizens too. I was learning more and more these days that there were all kinds of ways to be an American. Nina is rare too, because like me, she's married already, even though we're both only 22. While I'm constantly thinking of leaving my husband, she seems to actually adore hers. They've been together since high school and live together in a house off post where we all hang on the weekends, drink gin and tonics, and talk about what we hope to see and do in our Army careers. Her husband always seems to treat her with respect, like he believes she's just as good as he is, and he doesn't even mind the fact that she's the soldier, not him. They are what a married couple is supposed to be, I often think. They're a team, and I'm not sure if Jeff has ever been on my side. Nina and I are driving from Sierra Vista, the location of spy school, directly on the border of Arizona and the state of Sonora, Mexico. On pre-dawn runs straight up the still fog-covered mountains, we often find discarded backpacks and food wrappers or other things dropped along the way by those families who find themselves desperate enough to leave everything they know and sneak into a country while they're where they'll be second-class citizens forever. I wonder if they know they are coming in through an active military base. I remember the harsh terrain from my own teenage odyssey from Guadalajara to Texas, but I got to cross the border in much more comfort than these immigrants, with the American passport that had felt quite foreign in my hand. I wonder too what tricks they use to get past the border patrol stop just 10 miles up the road, the one we're approaching now. I think of the uncles sneaking us across international borders, wads of cash taped to their bodies, raised by sending us children out to beg on the streets, money we never got to see. I think of the aunties smuggling us out of one South American country to get our passports stamped in a neighboring country and then sneak back in through a different border city. Visa trips, we called them, and on the days-long bus rides, we sat, perfectly behaved, reviewing all the horrible, awful things that could happen to us kids if we didn't play our parts to perfection. As we approach the border patrol, I wince inwardly, like I always do, my age-old cult baby fear of cops and authority figures rearing its head. It's not lost on me that I am now ostensibly one of them. And aside from that, I've come to understand that police and government agents don't at all pose a threat to me the way I'd been taught to believe as a child. They look at me and see a pretty white girl, harmless, and that's its own kind of passport. Plus, I know this border patrol will be no big deal for us because of one thing, the blue sticker on the front of Nina's car. This is why you're not supposed to drink coffee with milk when you're recording. She, like all officers, has one of those official windshield stickers issued by the military base that allows your car to get inside. It means we're pre-checked. It means the soldiers at the gate are supposed to salute us. And they know, as all in the military know, that the one requirement for being an officer that separates us from the other enlisted soldiers is that we have to be U.S. citizens. I've driven this route over 60 times in the 6 months I've been at this base, and I've never once been stopped. Today in Nina's car, instead of the brief slowdown and wave, I've come to expect, the agent indicates that Nina should stop her car. Nina sits up straighter and squares her shoulders, and I am immediately reminded of that time in the car with Greg so many years ago, when I could feel his fear, but had no idea where it came from. The officer gets closer, and Nina rolls down her window, smiling brightly at him. "American citizen?" he asks. "Yes, sir," she says back, "born and raised in Washington State, near Seattle, officer." I can see him pause, then quickly change demeanor. To most people, it would be nothing, fleeting, barely a moment. It's a look I've come to know well. It's the same look that white Americans give me when I tell them I'm from Brazil and Mexico. The look Latino people give me the first time they hear me speak their language. It's the look Nina and I have both come to expect from civilians when we, girls, say that we are soldiers. A flicker of surprise, a small crack in the stereotype, a look away, and then the inevitable, oh, well, you don't look like a soldier. It starts to hit me that maybe there is more than one America. The one I am allowed to live in, and the one for Nina and Greg. As we drive away, I think about how Nina is the one who was born and bred here. The one who can tell people her hometown is Forks, Washington. Yes, like from Twilight. While I am left shrugging at the question. I don't have a hometown. And can you even be an American without one? I've gotten used to being called un-American by Jeff, but also sometimes by well-meaning acquaintances and colleagues who are surprised by some unique fact about me. But my Americanness has never really been questioned by anyone in a position of authority, by anyone that matters, even though it's something I've questioned my whole life. I have a top secret clearance for crying out loud, even with my shady background. When I'm asked, where are you from? Because someone picks up on the quirky lilt of my international kid accent, it's always with interest and amusement, never with suspicion. And I think too about the look I get sometimes when, excited upon hearing a foreign accent, I ask people where they're from. I haven't paid attention before because I was asking out of interest and excitement, eager to connect with another foreigner, someone who I sensed I would immediately have more in common with than with the average American. I realized suddenly that the look flashing through their eyes was full of a history I'd never fully understand. A look tinged with wariness, resentment, nervousness, and sometimes fear. To them, my question sounds like an accusation. I think about how hard I've tried to fit in, to mold myself into the perfect American woman Jeff wants me to be. What even is the perfect American? I think of Nina and her family of soldiers, clearly as dedicated Americans as you can be, and of my family, who taught me to revile America as Babylon the whore. I think of what Jeff says, hating immigrants as long as I've known, a passion he's now turned on terrorists, talking about how he loves hunting those ragheads, Hajis, though he's now a planning officer who never leaves his base in Afghanistan. These days, it seems he finds a way to call me un-American in every conversation, regardless of the fact that I literally wear the words U.S. Army on a name tape over my heart every damn day, same as him. How could I be un-American when I'm clearly willing to go to war? Hey. Come on, bro. How could I be un-American when I'm clearly willing to go to war, to sacrifice my life for this country, even in a war that I know few of us actually believe in? It hits me suddenly how much Jeff's brand of patriotism, more intense every time we talk on the phone, sounds like the cult anti-establishmentism dogma I grew up with. Like Bird's mad rantings, which I'd had to read, memorize, and listen to the uncles repeating every day of my childhood as they tried to pound the concepts into us. I had been programmed to hate the systemites, the backsliders, the outsiders, the other, Babylon, the whore. They were all out to get us, the good ones, the right ones, God's army, the chosen. We were so afraid. That is the constant state of people who believe they're being persecuted, is it not? And the only way to combat that fear is with righteousness, with an assertion of your power. Jeff is afraid. In his eyes, the system of power he'd been promised would work out for him, would elevate him if he simply dedicated his entire life to upholding it, is failing. There is fear in every sentence he speaks about what is coming for him in the future. His entire world is coming to an end, a complete apocalypse, and he sees himself as one of the righteous, one of the chosen, who will fight. Something else Jeff has unwittingly taught me is that when you have power, you don't have to be perfect all the time. In trying so hard to be an American, in dedicating my years to our army, and in learning where I fit into all of this, I realize I have more power now than I've ever had before. And I don't want to give up any more of that power to Jeff, to any man, to any more echoes of extremism. And I know in this moment that it means leaving him. You have a blue sticker, I say lamely, unsure how to express my confusion and hurt for her. It's no big deal, Nina says, waving her hands backward over her head, in the wake of the patrolman, bringing me back to where I am. It happens all the time. As if that makes it okay. But it is a big deal. It's always a big deal when someone tells you that you don't belong. Do that again. As if that makes it okay. But it is a big deal. It's always a big deal when someone tells you that you don't belong. Yes, they are dangerous when they figure out it's not going their way. And there are studies that show that the perception of persecution works as strongly to get people to conduct violence as an actual threat to your life. Thank you. I don't feel badass most of the time. All right. TikTok is going to punish me so much for saying all these words out loud. Okay. Chapter 19, Heartless Bitch, Arizona, 2010. I sent Jeff an email telling him I wanted a divorce, and his response was, "I'll call you tonight." Now, here we are, talking on the phone, something we barely even do anymore. We've been married almost 2 years, but we've spent less than 6 weeks in the same place since our wedding night. He's across the world in Afghanistan, and I'm not sure I've ever missed him. Neither of us are bringing up what this call is really supposed to be about. I ramble about some spy school project I failed, while he finds a way to insert his racist slurs about Muslims and remind me how I'm not as much of an officer as he is. After a while, I can't take it anymore. I can't keep pretending everything's the same. "So what do you think?" I say, "about my email?" "I think you're nuts," he says. "I'm your husband. You're my wife. You aren't going anywhere." I tell him I'm not happy, that I don't think we'll ever be happy together. We're different people, and I'm not sure he even likes me. I ask him why he can't let me go. "Do you think we should have a baby when I get home?" is his response, and I am speechless. Just imagine the baby we would have together, Danny. A little girl with your cheekbones and my eyes, your Eastern European beauty, your bone structure, your perfect white skin, my Texas backbone. She'll break everybody's hearts and know how to shoot a gun before she can read. No, Jeff. The Army has taught me how to use my voice, how to make it hard. Babies make terrible band-aids for marriages. They have tiny little hands. You know what people are going to say about you, a woman leaving me while I'm deployed, right? That you're a heartless bitch who's definitely cheating on me, a soldier, while I'm at war. The fact that you're a soldier too, that only makes it worse. It means you know exactly what you're doing. And that's what I'll tell people. And what about your family? What about your mom? How will it feel for them to know you're such a slut? I'm exhausted, and I don't care about his threats anymore. I don't care if he trashes my reputation. I just want to be free. The rest of the call consists of me holding my ground while he tries various tactics to change my mind. He tries to remind me about how great we were in college, but all I remember is being afraid that if I didn't pick Jeff, nobody would love me again. He had told me so many times that nobody would ever love me like him, as though I wasn't worthy, as if I was lucky to have been found and chosen by him. In his mind, he'd rescued me, and I believed I was someone who needed to be rescued. He asks me if I really want to be such a failure that I'm divorced before I'm even 25, though I'm still only 22. He switches so quickly between threats and promises, between cruelty and compliments, that I get dizzy. How do you know I'm not going to get horribly depressed and just go kill myself? He says. There are a lot of guns here, you know. This isn't about him. It's about me. I fought so hard for my life, for my freedom, and I can't even remember how or why I traded it all in for this one man with his little bit of power. How could I be married when I didn't even know who I was? No, Jeff, I want to be divorced at 23, I snap back with finality. Fine, he says, and hangs up. Still, he is in control. He knows I can't call him back at Bagram, and I know that all the power of how this will go forward rests in his hands. This isn't over. I heard the ice-cold anger in his voice, and I know he'll try to make me suffer. I shudder, glad he's deployed to Afghanistan and that there is no way he can get to me right now. I'd never realized it before, but I feel it now overwhelming me. I'm terrified of my husband. I try to focus on my work as the divorce gets ugly and Jeff makes good on his promise to make my life a living hell. My intelligence training requires me to try to think like the bad guys as I battle my own war with my own bad guy. I wonder why sometimes it feels so much easier to be one of them, to forget my own story, to move into a new identity without looking back at where I came from. It's so easy for me to lose myself, to think like the enemy, like these terrorists with their fanaticism, their extreme religion, their willingness to do anything for their cause. It's not so different from the world I was raised in. I think of the uncles with their talk of being good guys, of being on the side of right, and having to do bad things to ensure that the good guys would win in the end. I think of Jeff and his similar rhetoric, of all of these grown men in their camouflaged pajamas calling themselves the good guys with their full chests. And here I am, the US Army having poured an estimated $1.5 million of training into me to teach me a version of the same thing, to unquestionably believe in the rightness of our cause, and to do anything to ensure that our side wins in the end. In 2 months, I will be in Afghanistan to do just that. Fight the terrorists. Us versus them. The good guys versus the bad guys. And I think of Miss Mills, my high school history teacher, who, I realize now, in addition to teaching me how to be a feminist, taught me how to question all kinds of power and the structures running beneath it that so many people seem not to see. What would she think about what I'm doing now? Thanks. I'm glad you all find this relatable. I was telling my husband yesterday, I'm like, I think that like live streaming it is a really good idea.